Raising from last week. We kind of messed up the audio in the beginning because it was echoing, so we're just quickly going to reintroduce ourselves and jump right in. Just like that. So we're going to start with Abdullah.
I'm Abdullah. I'm a game programming major here, and I really love manga and like comics and stuff, and programming too. But yeah, I'm the speaker for this, and I'm the data analyst.
I'm Brandon. I'm a robotics major here at UAT. My interests are, of course, robotics, programming, magic, some other small hobbies off on the side. Yeah, can't forget magic.
Can't forget Magic the Gathering.
And I am a speaker here. And yeah, that's me.
I'm Andrew Van Winkle. My major is game art and animation. I'm interested in games and art.
Animation. Don't forget
about that.
And yeah, I like anime and RPGs. So, yeah.
Awesome. My name's Kevin. I'm the host for this show, and I'm into games, and I'm a game design student. And I'm also into design as well. And I practically do most of the clubs here on campus, so it's pretty interesting. I have like a really broad likeness to practically everything entertainment-wise. And tech's really exciting to work with as well. So, yeah. So that's just like a quick rephrase of basically what we said or 2 weeks ago, because we are going on a 2-week system. Now we're back on the podcasts week, and we're going to start introducing guests each of these weeks. Our first guest today is Adam, and so tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Hi everyone, my name's Adam, and I am a professor of game design and game production, and I am an indie game developer that works here locally.
Well, thank you for introducing yourself, Adam. So actually, last week we did Game Jam, and you were the one who actually hosted us for this site at UAT. So could you tell us a little bit more about that too?
So what would you like to know about Game Jam?
Well,
I mean, you were there.
Yeah, practically. So we did work on a lot of stuff too. It was actually a really unique topic as well, which was transmission. You actually worked on the game yourself as well. I kind of wanted to bring that up too.
So a couple of things about the recent Game Jam. It's the biggest Phoenix Global Game Jam we've had. I believe it's probably the biggest global Game Jam. We had over 140 participants here in Phoenix. Yep. We had people from Las Vegas drive all the way down here because there wasn't a site in Nevada. I did participate this time. It's been probably about a year since the last time I jammed. So I decided this time I was definitely going to have to jam too.
Yeah.
The downside of organizing jams is that it's not so easy to participate in them because you already know the theme, and so it's just not really fair to everyone that one person already knows everything that's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. And we actually had a couple of interesting topics for our Game Jam as well. So if I recall, yours was on disease transmission?
Yes. So our game was Sheepocalypse. We went through a few different ideas of different types of transmissions that we could do, like transmitting a message, the transmission of disease. We did eventually settle on transmission of disease. And whenever I jam, a lot of the people that I jam with, we usually jam to learn a new skill. And so the new skill that I learned this time was I composed the music for our Game Jam.
Oh, okay, cool. Because we were also like doing musical components for our game as well, and we actually finished 2 soundtracks for the game. Actually, the person behind the camera who's operating our stream, Mike, composed all of the music for our game, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we weren't able to submit. It's a game called Sound Raves. I won't go too much. Yeah. So actually, Abdullah and Andrew were on the team too, and we couldn't submit specifically because of programming errors in our department. We did finish all the art asset, so that's good. I don't want to bring up a little bit too much on that, specifically because we are still working on it and we still want to release the game. So that's something we're going to try to work really hard on and try getting released. And then maybe in the future we can probably talk about it on the podcast when the time comes. But
Shameless advertisement.
shameless advertisement. It sounds like it's going to be on Steam. It's going to be it's going to be $19.99. But yeah, so you guys can like pick up on the conversation, whether you guys want to talk about like Game Jam as well.
Or some of the other interesting games that came from the Game Jam.
I didn't get to see a lot of them because I was also demoing mine, but the I think it was like called Spooky Business or something.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of that.
So that was a game that won Best Use of Theme, and how they did transmission was you play as a poltergeist that goes from like different objects of furniture, so you can transmit yourself between them, and then you can move objects around, throw them at people, and what you're trying to do is you're like fighting these Ghostbusters that are trying to get rid of you.
Oh, that sounds a lot like the game Crawl, actually. Because they do that too. That's interesting. And they did that in like, what, 3 days? 2 days? Because the weekend?
Yeah, 48 hours. They built the
that's
game
impressive.
from scratch.
That's actually impressive.
They had like a leaderboard system because when we were coming in and out of like development, I think it was like the second day of our game jam, I was walking by and Todd grabbed me and was like, hey, I need you to test the game real quick. And I kind of saw like the process of them making the game, and it was really interesting to see how they like balanced their game, because before it was like pretty easy to climb up the rank on your ladder, and the way they balanced that was to like add more enemies, increase the difficulty of the enemies, like the speed on how they react, and it's really interesting how they like implemented those design choices in the game in just a short amount of time.
That was impressive.
Yeah, Todd and Roger are really great programmers.
Yeah.
So I didn't see their process, but I know a good chunk of it from working with them.
Yeah.
What you usually want to do is you want to set up the variables like that so that they're public, so that designers can make changes on the fly and see what feels right.
Yeah.
And what engine did they make that in?
That was Unity.
Oh, it was Unity?
Yeah.
They actually were planning on making it into a multiplayer game.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, wow.
so it's like network based. So you can connect to a server and you'd have people playing as the Ghostbusters trying to take out the props that are flying around, taking people out.
Oh.
And you'd have the props that would go around and try to survive, take out the Ghostbusters. But yeah, it's a really interesting idea, and it kind of like bounces off to our next topic on like just design in general and good design choices. Actually, Adam here is also a club leader for one of the clubs here on campus called IGDA, which is the Game Developer Association here, and they do a lot of things, more design choices and just everything about design, and we really talk about games, but Adam can explain it way better than I can. So
That's 2 in 1 right there. Jackpot with the guests.
So the IGDA is the International Game Developers Association. Our chapter is one of the academic chapters, and so we focus a lot more on professional development, skills development, stuff like that. But it's actually an international organization. We have a Phoenix chapter. There's also an ASU chapter. There's chapters all over the country. There's chapters all over the world. And the professional chapters, they usually meet less frequently than we do. We meet once a week. They usually meet once a month. And they have more stuff that they focus on outside of what we do. So they have a lot of networking events where it's just a bunch of people from different studios getting together to just like spend a night together at a bar and hang out. They also have different special interest groups that advocate for different things that developers are interested in. Like there's the basic groups for like the game design special interest group, but then there's a lot more specialized ones where there's like a romance in games special interest group that focuses on romance and sexuality in games.
So does that also link into like visual novels and like that kind of area as well, or just like romance and RPGs? How
Yeah,
that
it's
kind of,
like in
influences?
Bioshock
So
games.
That's
so-
actually really interesting. I didn't think they would actually talk about like subtopics on that because talking about like romance within those genres as well is kind of like interesting to design as well because it also does play a huge part in narrative.
Yeah, and it's not just the design too, it's also knowing what sort of things you can put in your game and release them on Steam or release them to a retail store. Like, is it too mature for this platform? I know that the Apple Store is pretty strict about stuff like that. Steam is not as strict, but you do have to work with them to make sure that your game is okay to be on there.
So is there a set bar of like how sexual a game can get for the rating?
So for ESRB, yes. For the different platforms, there's not a lot of information out there about exactly what they're okay with and what they're not okay with. So for ESRB, they've changed how it runs a bit in the last few years. There's this new platform you can submit your game to where you fill out the survey and then it like sends the information to all the different ratings boards and gives you like your PEGI rating and your
that's
ESRB
useful.
rating. Yeah.
It's really useful. And that's all free? You just submit it there and then they...
Off the top of my head, I don't know what the pricing is for it.
Wait, we did talk about this in IGDA. No. We talked about it in Markowitz 101 class, where he talked about pricings for ESRB ratings, copyright prices and ratings, and a couple other things about just like the technical side and like professional side of releasing a game.
Yeah, so like registering a copyright, it costs a flat fee. I don't know what the current price is. I think it might be like $40. It's been a while since I've registered one.
So what was the last game you made to register a copyright on it?
Was it the Morpheus? Is it that?
No,
Morpheus isn't finished yet.
Oh, it's not done? Okay.
Yeah. Last one that I finished, I didn't have to register a copyright on. That's because I was working for someone else at the time.
Okay.
And that one, that one's been taken down.
Oh.
What?
It wasn't a very good game,
Okay.
so I'm not unhappy that it's gone.
You're like, thank God.
It reminds me of that story you always tell us in IGDA about the Legoland MMO. Oh, the Lego MMO. That was great.
So there was a Lego MMO, and when I was an undergrad student, I got contacted by like this HR company that was being super secretive about what they were contacting me about, and they wanted to hire me to work as a designer on this MMO that they couldn't say what it was. All I could say is it was a licensed property for children. And like I thought, okay, this is starting to sound super sketchy.
Yeah, it's kind of sketchy.
They can't tell me anything. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to finish my degree. And then I did some research on the company. And then, like, a few months later, the Lego MMO got around. and, like, I recognized, like, the name of the company, like, who they had hired for their main HR person. I was like, oh, so that's what I would have been working on.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the Lego MMO was not a success. And I believe the servers have been shut down since then.
Yep.
The fact that came out like
Never.
months later.
Like they finally announced it, and I was like, I wonder
what they called me for.
And then I looked up where the studio was. I'm like, hey, that's the same area as the area code from the phone number of the person I was talking to. And then I looked them up and I'm like, oh yeah, they work at this studio. So it was the Lego MMO.
And I'm guessing you don't regret not taking it.
I don't regret it simply because, like, I would have learned a lot. It would have been like a job in the AAA industry, but the project itself, like, it did not succeed, and like I would have felt bad about that. I would have had to leave the university and not finish my degree to do that.
Okay.
And so I think that I made the right choice by sticking with it, finishing my degree.
He didn't just dodge a bullet, he dodged a whole bullet train.
It's
like,
Man.
Do you think that it could have succeeded if you were on the team?
I don't think I would have been the deciding factor in the game succeeding. They released an MMO at a time where there wasn't enough room for more MMOs in the industry. And the audience that they released it for wasn't an audience that was going to pay a subscription fee. So,
Okay. So it was a subscription-based game.
I believe it was, but it really shouldn't have been. It was just a really hard audience to monetize an MMO for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bouncing off of that,
Yeah.
IGA is planning an event later this week, or
That's
later next month actually.
So we have a couple of things coming up. We're doing portfolio reviews upcoming next week, and that's to prepare for our trip to GDC.
Yep.
So for those of you who might not know, GDC is the Game Developers Conference. It is the game industry's biggest job fair, and I've been going for a very long time. Several years. And so this time we're actually going to be taking the UAT van up there.
Yeah.
So that's going to be an experience.
we have a van?
Yeah. We have a
yeah.
Oh, now I want to go. I really want to go now.
So it's a full-size van that's going to be packed to the gills with college
Ew.
students
Yeesh.
for a 12-hour drive.
Ah, never.
Oh, we got 2 teachers coming with us too, right? George Riccio.
So yeah, George is going and Hugh Henry is going.
Yep.
I love
so,
both of them and Adam, but that's a lot of people in one van.
It's going to be a fun trip. At least for the people that don't have to drive. I'm not one of those people.
You're driving, right?
Yes.
Ah, oof.
Are you guys just gonna do like the full 12-hour drive, or do 6-hour drive and 6-hour drive for another person?
We'll probably switch off. I've done the full drive on my own several times, so I know what we're getting into.
Yeah.
So switching off is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Like getting towards the end of that drive,
You're like, I can't take it.
I can't get me out of here.
Get me out of here now.
Too many sweaty college kids.
it's an exhausting drive. I've never done it in the van. I've done Los Angeles in the van, but driving all the way to San Francisco.
Los Angeles traffic.
It's. I would say it's not too bad, but that would be a lie. It's pretty bad.
I'm so sorry.
I usually time it so that we arrive and leave outside of rush hour.
Okay, that's good.
Unfortunately, on our drive to San Francisco, I'm expecting we're going to hit LA around rush hour, both on the way there and on the way back.
No, please, no.
Because LA is about 6 hours from both directions. It's like the halfway point.
It's like a middle boss. Like
Yeah.
you're driving to
It's the
GDC.
mini boss.
You're driving to GDC, and it's like, all right, now get through 50 cars in one single lane. It's like,
Yeah.
why must I go through this?
I remember a couple of years ago on the drive, Google Maps is like, just get off the highway for the next 3 hours. Like, just take these surface streets until the highways are drivable again.
Wow, that's bad.
Yeah.
Los Angeles traffic gets really bad.
San Francisco, the Bay Area's traffic can be even worse.
Yeah, sure.
Not necessarily downtown, but there's areas around Google where a 20-mile drive could take a couple hours during rush hour.
Oh my god.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. Oh my, thank god I don't drive.
Yeah.
Once we get up there, we're parking the van and we're just going to be walking. So.
Yeah. Ooh. Tell them about the Tenderloin.
So there's this neighborhood in San Francisco called the Tenderloin. And I know it sounds delicious. It's not. It is the highest violent crime district in the entire city. And it is right next to the conference center. It's where all the cheap hotels are. A lot of the parties, you have to walk through the Tenderloin to get to them.
Oh.
So if you do go to San Francisco, if you go to GDC, always use the buddy system when you're walking around. And be careful in the Tenderloin. It's a pretty sketchy neighborhood. I remember a couple years ago, the group that I went up with rented a hotel about as deep into the Tenderloin as you could possibly get from the convention center. And I remember my walk to the hotel, like people were just like using crack on the streets, broad daylight. Like they're not even trying to hide it. It's like, okay.
It's like, hey man, you want some?
While he's walking past.
Well, I've had people try to sell it to me before while I'm walking to the hotel.
Oh,
I'm like,
no.
no thanks, I'm good.
That's illegal.
I'll pass.
But you were talking a bit earlier about Los Angeles, and that kind of like made me remind me about a point that Dooley was talking about earlier. We'll get to that topic a little bit later, but
It's not the time yet.
it's great.
It's not the time yet.
We wanted to talk more about game design in general, and kind of go a bit into depth of what we were talking last week. So last week in IGDA, we were talking about the intricacies of Doki Doki Literature Club's coding and how it works and how they made specific things work. It's actually really interesting. Adam was telling us a bit of the code last Thursday, or 3 days ago actually.
Yeah. So they do a lot of interesting things in Doki Doki to like save on space and to do different visual effects. So do you mind if I spoil?
Caution!
Spoilers alert!
Spoilers! If you don't leave now, it's your fault.
So earmuffs for like the next 10 seconds if you don't want to have this spoiled for you. So there's a scene in Doki Doki Lit Club where your friend hangs herself. And when I first saw that, I thought it was a video. Like they're just running an MP4 in the background. They're putting the text boxes on top of it. And so when I decompiled the code and I went through it, what I discovered was that it was not a video. It was all done with sprites and background images and audio and visual effects that they had coded. And so like there was just this giant chunk of code that covered about 5 seconds of video. And they just did everything in Engine. So it wasn't like a pre-rendered video or anything like that. Like some of the stuff that they do to save on space is they take the bodies and the heads of the characters and they separate them. And they cut the character's body in half so they have a sprite for the left half, a sprite for the right half, and a sprite for the head. And they can recombine those in different ways to do different images without having to make several different versions of the character.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting that they did that all.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, so what they did was they just, all of those sprites are the same aspect ratio, they're the exact same size. And so what they do in code is they just merge all of those images into a composite image and they use that for the character sprite.
Yeah.
It's the first time I've seen somebody do that in the code, actually. Just refer to this, pull it back.
So it's actually a really common trick, and it was a lot more common like in the PlayStation 1 days and the Super Nintendo
that's
days.
probably why I'm not.
That's also in the early PC days.
Yeah, so one of my favorite examples where they did that is Final Fantasy Tactics. All of those
really?
sprites, like they've separated the arms, the heads, and all the different parts. So like the animations for attacking someone, it just grabs a few different arm sprites and uses those.
Oh.
Okay.
You know, I think you were bringing it up also in GDA, how Rayman Legends does their design as well.
That was not me.
Okay, well, Rayman Legends does the exact same thing. They spread out all of the animations in separate sprites, and separate like PNG images, and they combine it all into one character. And when the character attacks, it pulls all of the sprites specifically needed for that animation and plays the animation. And it's like not just like one part or like 3 parts of the body. It's quite literally every single bone structure for the characters in Rayman Legends, which is like actually really interesting because after the IGDA talk you were talking about the video animations, because I thought I saw it in class, but I guess I didn't because that's also around the same time I went back and tried researching into it and seeing how much it's used in animation, and surprisingly it's used a lot in modern animation.
So tricks like that are mostly for 2D animation. They do different stuff for 3D. I'm not as well versed in 3D as I am in 2D. But it was in the earlier days of making games, space was expensive. You had only so much space on the disk that you could have files for, and so anything that you could do to reuse either images or cut down on the size of your images you would do in order to make room for more gameplay content.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember back in like the PlayStation 1 games, like the Final Fantasy games had like 6 discs or like 3 discs just in that one case because they had the same space. So.
And each disc that they added to the game, like that made the cost of manufacturing go up, and so that would make the cost of the game potentially go up.
PTSD to Onimusha. Like
Onimusha.
7 different game discs. Oh, wait, you got the part 2? Put in the other disc. Okay.
It was actually like that too for Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic.
Really?
You'd have 4 different discs, and as soon as you got a specific part of the game, it's like, insert game disc number 2.
Oh no.
So have you guys ever played FMV games?
No.
What does that stand for?
Full motion video.
Nope.
So this was a really popular thing in the early 90s. And this was before 3D really took off. They decided instead of doing animation, stuff like that, we're going to get actors for our games and we are going to film them. And we're going to use like full motion video for the things that happen in our games.
Okay.
So there are some full motion games out there. They tend to be like 6, 7, 8 CDs long because
Oh my god.
like all of the character animations, what they did was they filmed the actors standing there and like doing an idle animation, or then they filmed them walking for a walking animation. And so it's all just recorded video of people, and all of the cutscenes are literally movies where they set up cameras and they film them.
Oh. That's interesting.
So do they like put like a character like overlaid on top of the person, or is it just like the actual person?
It's the actual person. And so I remember that it was the second Gabriel Knight was the first really big one that I got. And it's like 6 CDs long, and it was going to be even longer than that. They had to cut a bunch of content because it was expensive to make. And that was a good chunk of game history right there, is where they tried to merge sort of with Hollywood, and then 3D started to take off and they got away from that.
Oh yeah.
I think of whenever I think of the FMV, I think of the old like detective games where they try to do that.
Yeah, they've done that. There's The Seventh Guest. There's Phantasmagoria is another one.
Yep. Have you ever played any of the old Star Wars games? Jedi Outcast or Dark Forces? Do you remember the cutscenes where they would have the fully cheesy cut actors trying to act like Star Wars does? That's my childhood. But,
LucasArts had the benefit of having their own movie studio and everything. A lot of the game studios that were doing that, like, they had a background in games. They didn't have a background in film. LucasArts was kind of the outlier there.
Yeah.
Bit of a divergence that you just reminded me of. when LucasArts shut down their games, someone from one of their studios leaked the source code for Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy and Jedi Outcast. And so you can still find that source code online in some places. I believe it was built in C++, and I doubt you could actually build from the source code that you have, but you can learn a lot by studying it.
Yeah. So someone actually picked up that source code and actually put it in a standard Unreal Engine. Or not standard, modern Unreal Engine.
So like they put it in Unreal 4?
They put it in Unreal 4 and it works just like any other Star Wars Jedi Outcast game. It looks beautiful. If you actually look online, they actually edited how the lightsaber mechanics work as well, and they improved it, and it's amazing. I think they have it on standstill for now, but like they have it as an indie project, and I think the reason why they have it on standstill is because EA threatened like shutting down the project. So yeah, there's a lot of people picking up that source code and reusing it. And it's actually really interesting to see them like picking it up and making the lightsaber mechanics like even more interesting than they already were. And
I'm gonna have to look into that. That sounds really cool.
It is.
So the Jedi Knight games were a bit of an addiction for me when they first came out.
Yes.
Even though like the first Jedi Knight game, the lightsaber fighting was like swinging a stick at someone. It didn't really have that feel from the movies yet, but Outcast and Academy got really, really good with their lightsaber mechanics.
It's great. And they also had like collision mechanics, so if like you slice someone in a specific pattern, they would also get sliced in that area. Like if you slice their arm would pop off.
Yeah,
but
so
it wouldn't be graphic.
They set up the character models that way too.
Yeah.
So like the artists had to get involved with that.
It's awesome. But so before we run out of a lot of the time we have left, I just wanted to go over one last topic, which will be Dooley's topic that he said he wanted to
Oh, we're going to Dooley's topic.
Yeah.
Okay. Spin the roulette. No. Okay, so, depends. You guys want to go back to Los Angeles right now? Or to AI? There's two ways we could go.
We'll do AI next time we are here, but let's actually focus on
the one I
Los
brought up
Angeles.
before? Okay,
Yep.
So I'm pretty sure we all know who Elon Musk is, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he has a few companies.
A few.
Yeah, a few. He has Tesla, SpaceX, and also a company called The Boring Company.
Yeah.
And Solar City too.
Yeah.
Solar City.
He has a lot of companies, and one of the things that The Boring Company did to raise some money for the whole, you know where I'm gonna go. One of their projects is to build like an underground kind of system to reduce traffic in cities and stuff, and they're gonna test it out in Los Angeles. And so one thing that they did to raise money for that is they started selling hats that said The Boring Company.
Mhm.
But Elon Musk did another thing after all the hats, like they sold really well apparently.
Yeah. If you don't mind me.
Go ahead.
So essentially he was saying that if the hats did sell well, he promised that they were going to start selling flamethrowers.
Yeah.
But they're not called flamethrowers anymore. They're called something else. I don't know exactly what they're called.
I just pulled it up actually.
You did?
Yeah.
Cameraman's going.
Let's go.
It's actually just called not a flamethrower.
Oh, so it's not.
It's called not a flamethrower.
Yeah.
All right.
And when they advertised it, they had a video of Elon Musk with the flamethrower in his hand. And just like, testing it out, running around with it. It was really funny.
That's great. Now we have flamethrowers. Thank you, Elon
No,
Musk.
we don't.
No, they're not.
No,
flamethrowers.
No, my
They're
head.
not a flamethrower.
We do
Kevin, get it
not.
right.
We do not have flamethrowers. I repeat, we do not have flamethrowers.
We probably shouldn't get them either because we're in Arizona and it's kind of dry here.
Yeah.
That could be a problem.
So the first thing was the joke with the flamethrowers, hilarious. But for the whole system that's underneath cities, what do you guys think about that? Starting
Could you
with-
explain more into it?
Okay, so their whole idea is that, in Los Angeles and in San Francisco, when it gets to rush hour, like Adam said before, traffic is really backed up. there's just so many cars in one place, and nothing really moves anywhere for a while. So the whole point was they could have the normal highways that we have now, and also the underground ones, so that it would reduce traffic on the ones that are on the normal highways right now, so it could divide, so that it won't be as backed up, and then you go back to having a normal flow of cars moving around and stuff. So that was
it'd be like an automated transport system, an underground transport system that just kind of like lowers your cars and transports it for you.
Yeah.
And I think they were trying to like put it at speeds of like 130 miles per hour, right?
It's like
Yeah.
a bullet train except your
Yeah.
car.
That
Yeah.
sounds terrifying. Oh my gosh.
But the thing is, it is going a bit slow because do you remember the first date that they promised to?
I don't remember the exact date.
But first they promised a date that it was supposed to be done, but then they pushed it back. But yeah, it's going slower than expected, but it's still a thing. They're still trying.
Okay.
I imagine that it would be like it was like the Continental Railroad in like that sort of way because you have to build these whole underground systems, so you're creating an entirely new traffic network.
Yeah.
Also, you have to keep them stable. And didn't they say they were going to do like 30 floors of them as well?
Yeah, they were trying to do a multi-level.
You might want to try doing like one floor.
Yeah.
And if that works out, maybe two.
I don't think 34 were like even remotely ready for it.
Yeah.
So my concern is testing that out in LA. California does get earthquakes.
Yeah,
quite
that's
frequently.
That's
Yeah.
what I wanted to. That's what I wanted to bring up too.
And so
I think-
it might not be the best place to test it.
Yeah, you gotta tell a flamethrower man that. So he
It's like
He's
it's a really
he's not a flamethrower. Sorry.
it's really smart idea is that I think that Adam brought up because I was like also thinking about the same thing. Earthquakes would really affect the project, and you'd have to find a way to make the system really stabilized so it's not affected by any terrain that's being moved in that specific earthquake.
Going 130
Because like
miles per hour.
Sorry, my bad. If a earthquake at a magnitude of 8 hits California, like that system is gonna crumble.
It wouldn't even need to be an 8 for there
Oh,
something
yeah.
horribly
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, I mean, like if something just gets misplaced and your car, again, at that speed is going towards it, then like you're done. You either like pancake or like if there's one part of it, you just like hit it, even like side skip it, and then.
Yeah, a little bit.
That also comes into another concern. So, do you guys know what CES is? The CES convention?
What does CES stand for?
Consumer Electronics Show?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
I know what it is.
Yeah, Adam knows. So it happens every year. I believe the last one just passed in January. And, so it's just a bunch of companies just showcasing their new tech and trying to make sure that people get into it, sell off. So there's this thing called the e-pallet self-driving car, right? We all know about self-driving cars, and they're new. They're a new thing. But what they propose is that instead of companies making a brick and mortar store or like have a store that's stationary, they wanted to make a bunch of self-driving cars and sell them to companies so that companies could put their stores in the self-driving cars, and the self-driving cars would go around selling things and advertising things. So let's imagine Adam gets off of work. Let's say he's not a game developer, he's an office worker. He's like, man, I'm hungry. Gets off of work, goes outside, sees a self-driving car that's McDonald's. Even though, I'm sorry to make you eat at McDonald's. I'm so
Don't be sorry. I enjoy McDonald's. I know it's unhealthy, but it tastes good.
Okay, so at something Adam would do, alright?
Yeah.
Okay, so he goes there, he's like, man, I want some McDonald's right now. He walks in to the self-driving car, and it's just a bunch of like, what is it, AR displays that he would select what he wants, and then the car would bring out the food, he paid for it, and then he'd get outside, right? And so it's just a bunch of stuff like that. It's more for businesses, so that they could go around and showcase stuff and sell things. But a big counter argument for that is, one, they wouldn't be able to go with the whole underground city thing, because what Ellon Musk is proposing that we'd have underground and then on the floor. And also, that's assuming that everyone that gets into one of those self-driving cars will obey the law.
Yeah.
That's also assuming that they'll obey. So what if I'm instead? Let's just insert me instead of Adam, right? I'm like, I want to do something mischievous today. I walk in to the car, I eat a bunch of burgers, and I leave without paying. Imagine. Then McDonald's loses money because everybody's like, wow, I could just walk in and do whatever I want and then leave. Doesn't matter.
Well, I can. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Andrew.
You could lock the person inside the car
Until
and then
they
have it
pay.
to dial the
Yeah, that's-
authorities.
Okay, thank you for saying that. That'd be so funny.
We're locking you inside.
And
You
then
eat the food or you become the food.
So
So it's actually a Soylent Green car.
It is a
Oh,
Soylent Green car.
Imagine.
Oh my
So
gosh.
thank you for saying that, Andrew. That's an argument that someone brought up. Like, if people don't obey the law, then lock them in. But let's imagine now it's Kevin, right? And Kevin's like, man, I want some McDonald's. Walks in, forgets his wallet inside the building, eats, and then the car's like, are you gonna pay? He's like, oh sure, I'll pay. Where's my wallet? And then he can't pay, and the car doesn't let him outside.
It's like, oh, well, I guess you're the new Whopper on the menu. Oh, wait, no, that's a BK thing. That's a BK thing. My bad. I guess you're the new...
Mac, you're the new Big Mac.
You're the new Big Mac.
But yeah, that's also, there are many like arguments about the self-driving car, and people are like, you should not release this for businesses.
I don't think that's probably a wise use of it. If I wanted something delivered to me, I would just use something like Uber Eats or DoorDash or something like that, where someone goes to the store, picks up what I ordered, and then brings it to me.
Brings it back.
Yeah. And that makes a lot more sense than trying to figure out where the McDonald's car is going to be today.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it would move around a lot. It'll change based on where people are, because it's probably going to go to the more high-density places of where people are instead of going into small places and catering to other people.
Yeah.
And it's also not just food trucks, food cars, whatever you call it. What they proposed in the video when they put out the self-driving car is it was a restaurant. There was also like a what's the name of those? A lounge car. So you walked in, you pay for the amount of time that you're going to be there, and then you just relax on your way, and then it transports you to where you want to go.
So it's just like a lazy boy attached with wheels and an engine?
Oh, thank you for. Okay, so the design.
It's a self-driving rickshaw.
Oh no!
The design of the car is also something that people don't like because it's pretty ugly. Okay, so it's just a box, a rounded box with wheels on the bottom.
It literally is just a lazy boy with wheels on it. That's awesome. I want it now.
A lot of people are like, wow, that's really ugly. You should really change the design and what you're going to use it for. So what do you guys think? I haven't heard from you yet, Brendan.
Well, like what Adam was saying, I could see self-driving cars being used a lot for delivery systems.
Mhm.
But trying to get it for like advertising or being a food truck, there are a lot of issues that go into that. Especially with if it is a food car, there's a lot of infrastructure that you need to figure out. Like if it's what you say it is in just like a box, it's probably
it's
not
just
going
a
to be able to
box,
store enough
rounded
food even
wheels.
to serve people. So if people walk in and it has a huge line coming up, it's gonna run out of food quick. And other things too, if it's like driving around and just kind of like advertising products. I'd imagine it would be fairly easy for people to just break into the car and steal products. So
Yeah,
they have
that's,
that issue.
that's what it
So,
was. Like you're assuming that everyone's going to obey the law.
Yeah.
And then the expenses for the company, like they have to pay for the gas for the self-driving car to go around and advertise
Yeah.
for them. They have to either rent the car or they're buying it. It might just be cheaper to rent a billboard.
And
Yeah.
like to add on to that, I mean, if you wanted to secure it, maybe you could have someone as like a security guard sitting in the driver's seat, but not actually driving.
See, that's the thing. When ePallet put it up, they're like, no, you don't need any humans in the car. It's just the car. And that was the problem. It's like, you expect this car to go around and do everything. So many things could go wrong.
Yeah.
Because also let's imagine that it's also going to be in the underground thing that Elon Musk was talking about, right? So the car is supposed to drive around and it already knows where everything is at. but you don't know how it's gonna work when it goes underground. It might freak out because it's like, where am I? I
It's
don't
just
know.
flying 130 miles.
Yeah,
like,
it's going way too fast, and it's
Where
like, why am I
am
going
I?
so fast?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a lot of problems with that too. What do you
Yeah.
think, Kevin?
I really just like figure out that I think both the ideas are like have huge problems to them.
Wait, which both? Are you still talking about the self-driving car? or-
Self-driving car and the underground railroad
Oh,
system.
okay.
And the problem with putting both of them together is that you make an even bigger problem. It's like, instead of fixing the problem at hand, let's put both the problems together and then
Make
fix
a
the
big
bigger
problem.
Yeah, it'll just fix the bigger problem. It'll
You-
fix both the problems. But
Yeah.
it's like a wrong way to approach it. But it is a really interesting idea. They just have to refine it more before they're like, all right, let's stick with this idea and just make this an idea. But they have to look through all the problems that could arise from having a self-drivable car that delivers food, and everything that can go right with it. So a way they could make it right is have it like the entire bunk, which is the back, which I'm assuming they're gonna have like robots making the food.
Wait, say it again? No, it's pre-made. With the way that they
Oh, it's
show it, it's
pre-made?
pre-made.
Oh,
And
well.
then they keep it heated if
Oh,
it's
so
supposed
it's-
to be heated.
Mm.
And then,
Oh, okay.
Right,
So
that's
the back,
yeah.
the entire
It's like an ice cream
back
truck.
of the car. So the entire back of the car can be like where the food is being stored and heated, and the passenger can walk inside, and there'll be a seat with a little table right to the left of it where the other passenger seat would be. And what will happen is that there will be a little box where it'll eject the food out to the table,
So more like a vending machine.
more like a vending machine.
Oh, more like
So
a
you
moving
pay-
vending.
Yeah, so it's
okay.
more like a moving vending machine that's specifically
machine
geared
on
towards
wheels.
McDonald's.
But
So you
that's
put in your
also a
money.
thing because people have messed with vending machines.
Well, yeah, it all depends. It all depends where you put it to test it. Like, let's say you're putting it in like one of the cleansiest cities and most like not prone to violent cities in America. Let's say you put it in some obscure city in Maine, right? There's like no one in Maine. There's like no one in Maine, exactly.
I've read enough Stephen King to know where this is going.
but like you put it in Maine, it'll be able to do the best case scenario where nothing wrong will happen. But there is something that still can
Except
go
becoming
wrong.
like possessed.
Of course, becomes possessed. And if you move it to Los Angeles, which is known for its crime as well, you can also have a really bad test where people vandalize it, people destroy it, or people just mess with it. Because people are always going to vandalize something.
Speaking of it being in a very dangerous place, so another argument that somebody put on Reddit, like what, an hour after they showed their self-driving car, they said, "What if drug dealers use this?" What if drug- because it's out of the once you get in the car is completely black. You can't see inside.
Yeah.
So what if drug dealers are like, "Oh, let me just walk into there, get my customers into there, and then sell my drugs from these cars"?
Well, you can have cameras in there.
Oh,
Boom.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
true. You
And then
could.
that
Or they
comes
could-
into like surveillance laws and privacy laws.
Does it go into
Right.
surveillance laws?
You don't.
Oh,
you
you
can
have to
just hijack the car. Yeah, and just like
So with
only use the self-driving.
with the surveillance laws, you also I think what goes into those regulations is that you have to be so you have to have a plaque stating that there is surveillance inside the car, and they have to agree going inside there. They have to make a personal decision that's saying that, hey, I'm going to go into this car that is under surveillance.
Mhm.
So once they read that sign, they have no way to like sue whatever company is writing this or using this car.
I think
So that kind of goes around that problem as well.
yeah, that's true. I think the best bet though would be like having the driving vending machine.
Yeah,
'Cause that would also be
Yeah.
close to what a food truck is. And you just get a lot of people coming up that order their food at the table, the public space where everyone can see them.
Do you guys think that they shouldn't use it for advertising?
I think they should use it for advertising. It kind of like
I think
bolsters
there's
the.
a lot of work that's going.
Yeah.
The only way I would say to use it for advertising is like put company logos on it.
Yeah.
And then that's it.
Yeah,
That's
like,
what I
like
was
don't
saying.
try to advertise by showing the product inside of the car, but like the outside of the car, make it that company's brand.
Yeah.
Oh, my issue with the self-driving car in itself is if you have all these automatic cars and everything, is that going to make traffic even more hard to get through? Like, is it going to cause like huge problems? Like in Los Angeles and San Francisco, since there's like so many people driving around, if they have all these self-driving cars everywhere, like that just adds to the amount of traffic. Like, how do you think?
It also adds to the amount of pollution, which is what the underground thing is trying to solve. Is not just the traffic, but it's also the pollution of having so many people driving at the same time.
Yeah.
So that might not be the best way to use it.
Okay. That also comes into our last topic. Okay, so at the CES convention, there are people that present what they're going to do and usually get a positive response. And then there's the negative ones.
Yeah.
There's also the ones that present something and it doesn't go too well. So Heli presented this belt airbag. Okay, so it's designed for senior citizens. It's not for people.
Yes.
It's okay. So it's designed for old people, and it's supposed to protect specifically their hip. So it's just a belt, and then on the sides there are these giant airbags. Looks a little ridiculous. and when they put on the belt, if it detects any kind of like force on their side, if they're like falling or something, then it'll deploy the airbag and make sure that they don't take any significant damage to their hips. So they presented it. It didn't go too well.
As expected.
Eventually it would cause more damage. So.
Yeah, airbags don't have a very good reputation for not causing damage. It's just they help prevent some worse things.
Yeah, and so a lot of people were questioning how they tested something like this. One, because they would have to put it on an old person and then
That's horrible.
It's like, hey grandma,
I need you to do something for me.
hey grandma, wear this. What? Ah! Oh, it works.
Oh my gosh.
So after they presented it,
Subject number 3 down.
after they presented it, a lot of people looked at it and they're like, I don't think I'm ever going to buy that, or let alone let my old parents wear that. I'm never going to do that. So they got a lot of negative feedback on that, and not many people bought it, so it was a failure. But what do you guys think about that?
It makes complete sense that it's a complete failure. I'm not putting a death belt on my grandma. No offense, but like, I mean the intentions were good, but the only way to test it is to put it on an elderly
old person and then.
Yes, and you have to find another way to test it.
And also, it's very specific because it's like it's only your hips. It's only bag on the sides. It's not the front.
Yeah,
that's the most common
That
damage
is.
that someone is going to have if they fall. Is they're going to possibly break their hip.
Yeah,
And I haven't seen what this boat looks like.
it's ridiculous. It looks so ridiculous.
And that's probably what killed it.
yeah.
Not even that, like, whether or not it works, but
Also
if
the
someone doesn't want to wear it, they're not going to wear it. I mean, it's part of the problem that we have with bike helmets. People think they look ridiculous in them, so they don't wear them.
It's like, I'm old, but I still know style. I'm not wearing that. I don't
And
care if I
so,
fall.
like, if they can make it look good and make people want to wear them, then they'd probably be successful.
They can make them like snazzy belts, fuzzy belts.
Yeah.
Is this strictly like in the car, or is this outside of the car too?
Wait, what did you say? In the car? No, this doesn't
It's
have
not
to do.
inside of a car.
It was
It's
at
not
the-
airbag?
It's a different
It's,
thing.
it's like an
Oh, okay.
airbag for an elderly person,
Yeah.
so like if they trip and fall, they don't break their hip.
Yeah.
So what if they're getting out of the car? You know, they're like trying to get out of the car, and the airbag goes off and they get pushed out of the car.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Problems.
Yeah. Design problems and situations.
But to kind of like wrap everything together, I think we're running out of time in total, so we're gonna try to bring everything to a halt and kind of bring our like last thoughts and what we wanted to talk about, or kind of like thoughts before we leave. So, any other topics? Was our last topic?
This is the last topic. I
Okay.
think, Adam, you don't like the belt, right? I'm pretty sure you don't like
If it looked better, I might get one. But my hips are fine right now, so maybe they'll get it looking good by the time I need it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
And Kevin, I'm pretty sure you don't like
Yeah,
it
no, that's a
either.
no. That's like 2
That's a
thumbs
no, and you know.
I mean, it would be fun to test out. I mean, we make a game out of it.
That's terrible.
That's terrible. Like, hey, Grandma, put this on. What?
down. Grandma number 17 down. Grandma number 18, please stand up. Brandon?
I think that they probably have to go through some more product development before they can make it and put it on the marketplace.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And it's speaking of the marketplace, it's stupidly expensive.
Oh, geez.
Yeah,
that's
Yeah,
another thing too.
Yeah.
Trying to target
Yeah.
elderly people. A lot of
You
them
should
are
make it cheaper.
no longer working.
They're on Social Security.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't have a lot of disposable income.
Yeah, you
They
gotta
don't
make
have
it a
enough
cheap
money for a belt that might hurt them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and wait, so you're not messing with the belt?
Not right now, no.
But,
And that's also a no for me. It's too many problems.
but
It's too
yeah,
expensive.
that concludes our second stream. Adam, I really appreciate you coming on the show
Well,
and
thanks for having me.
talking with us for like the past hour. So it was exciting talking about everything and belts that, take people out. But yeah, that was great. Thanks for coming.
Thanks,
So
Brandon,
we'll
too.
catch you guys 2 weeks from now after we post some footage on Global Game Jam. So see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Ciao. Goodbye.